Well, Coach, thank you so much for doing this. You're my third guest, but fret not, Jordan was the third pick, so you're still in good company. And as I said to my other guests, Todd McCulloch and George Lynch, you two are one of my all-time faves. We know you've moved on to St. Joseph's University. We're going to talk about that. But first, how's your family, your immediate family, your parents, and how are you guys doing in this time of quarantine, if you will?
Yeah, thank you, Tom. You can see as soon as I knew I was going to get on with you, I made sure I was representing the logo of my favorite NBA team of all time. Thanks for having me. This is an honor to be here with you. Family as well. We've got 4 boys all at different stages of puberty and teenage years, so we're trying not to cannibalize each other during this quarantine time right now, but we're healthy, which is the ultimate blessing to have, and so are my parents and my 96-year-old grandmother, who is doing well, quarantined, and everybody's good right now. We'll keep it going that way.
That's great. So as a college basketball coach at St. Joseph's, the season was just about to end when everything got shut down.
Right.
I can only imagine what it was like to touch base with your players, make sure they were okay, and then set the template for this time that is really unprecedented, particularly for you in a period after your first year.
So we lost our last game of the season, which was the first round of the Atlantic 10 tournament in a real nail biter against George Mason at the Barclays Center. We were in New York, ironically, and then got on the bus and came home. I had dinner with my staff that night, and just as we were eating, the announcement came out about the Rudy Gobert and the cancellation of the season. So we had already kind of said our goodbyes, and we were on spring break. So the guys were already home. Little did we know they were not going to come back. And that has since changed everything. But everyone's going through this. So there's very little stress level amongst us as coaches. We miss being with our guys. It was an abrupt end of the season. And obviously we were all looking forward to a work attitude that we were going to be able to restore here in the spring, particularly coming off the season we had. But we had energy and we were ready for it, but now it's different and we just have to adjust to the different.
How did you feel this season went? I mean, we followed it. Obviously, Ryan Daly had a tremendous year, but how would you describe your first season as coach at St. Joe's?
It's funny because in many ways, the record obviously is disappointing for players, coaches, fans, constituents, the whole bit. When we lost Taylor Funk 7 games into the year, we already were a group that had a very small margin for any sort of error. That was on kind of like our pre-mortem list, like we can't lose one of these guys, and we lost him, so that hurt. But I will say this, of all the years I've coached as a head coach or an assistant, this was one of the most rewarding in this facet. This was one of the most competitive, spirit-filled, engaged groups I've ever been around from day one till the end. I mean, there was never a sign of disengagement. The result of some of the games might have seemed that way, Tom, but it wasn't. These guys came to work. We might have had 2 bad practices all year. So my experience with Brett in the first few years with the 76ers gave me a different lens on that type of process than I probably would have had if I didn't have that experience with the 76ers. And we were able to keep the focus on the gain rather than the gap. And over the last 3 weeks of the Atlantic 10 regular season, outside of maybe 3 or 4 teams in our league, we were playing as well as anyone. We just weren't winning, which that is the result we all want. But we were able to step back and see where the trajectory of the group and the program were going. And we felt excited about it. So disappointed in the record, but not disappointed at all in the process and the games we made. I'm very encouraged.
Speaking of the program, and when you speak to recruits, and certainly going forward, when you talk about the rich history of St. Joseph's basketball, McKinney, Lynham, O'Brien, 04, undefeated, Phil Martelli, Mike Bantam. I mean, it's an incredible program. It must be the great selling point, the tradition of Hawk Hill.
It's easy for me, growing up in South Jersey and really growing up on Philadelphia basketball from high school through college and the NBA. Like, this is what you follow, right? This is a passion. This is just part of growing up in this Delaware Valley area. It's easy for me. It truly is. And with each passing day, I'm learning more and more about the tradition. Like, you just brought up a couple names that wouldn't roll off the tongue necessarily if kids that are 17. I know. It's everything. And so, talking about guys like Brian Warwick, and like these type of players, have created such an incredible legacy and history here. It truly is, across the country of all of college basketball, one of the best stories. So we just have to continue to tell it, and we have to modernize it in a way that is kind of relatable to today's youth, which that's what we need because we're recruiting.
When I go back to my first year in the NBA, 1995, we actually practiced at St. Joe's, and the Sixers, of course, had practiced there for many years before. And where I went to high school and where I went to college and played basketball, that setting was exactly like that. And so for me to be back on campus, I used to go to mass at the chapel at noon. At the time, it was the green gym, then the red gym, and the arena, and played pickup there. I mean, it was a great atmosphere, and that too, I would think, is a selling point as a great university.
It is. And basketball matters a great deal. You know, all the sports at St. Joe's have great tradition and they all matter. But one of the pillars that this school is built on is the tradition and the history of St. Joe's basketball on Hawk Hill, from great coaches to great players to great memories to great competitions in the Big Five and in the Atlantic 10. And there are so many students that I have met over the course of my 1 year here. And I would say, like, how did you get interested in St. Joe's? And most times it relates back to a brother or a sister or a mother or a father or an aunt or an uncle who a grandparent who introduced them to the idea of the university through some sort of basketball related vertical, right? So it's a big deal. It's just part of the blood of St. Joe's.
And then part of that, the outreach is the Big Five, the City Six, the rivalries, the games at the Palestra, the battles with Villanova. That's another slice of what I would think, would bring to young people that you want to play basketball for.
I mean, I hope so, because that's how I see it. You know, we play in a really good league in the Atlantic 10, but outside of that, you know, think about the things you get to be a part of. You get to be a part of the Big Five, which is incredible, right? And you get to be a part of a competition that actually has a name to it in the Holy War, right? So, you know, that's cool. I mean, and Villanova has been such an elite level program for the last decade that a chance to actually have that type of built-in competition year after year is truly an opportunity for us to continue to grow our own tradition.
So you spent 2 stints coaching at Villanova with Coach Wright. You coached the Navy Academy and other jobs in terms of an assistant coach on that collegiate level. What's it like to be running a program now and all the things you've learned and now putting them in place and beginning to put them in place as you go forward?
Yeah, I mean, outside of my own, let me back up. So I've had great mentors first, you know, from Speedy Morris at LaSalle to Herb McGee at what is now Jefferson University, but I was there when it was Philadelphia Textile, to Jay Wright, to Brett Brown, to my father, who I played for and grew up under, obviously going those games. So, like, I take a little bit of everything that I've learned from them. And then I've had my own tenure as head coaches, once in Division III and once at the Naval Academy, which you alluded to, where I can harken back on successes and failures, you know, areas where I feel like, hey, I was pretty good, and then areas where I need to be aware that I was weak, and then put all that together. And now it culminates in an opportunity to be a head coach in the Big Five at St. Joe's. And this is probably about as ready as I would have been for a position like this. And yet I still have so much more to grow. So I'm excited for that as well.
So you speak of your heritage and your pedigree, and your father was the coach at Eustis and you played at Rowan. But it all goes back to St. Rose in Haddon Heights. And you had a special group there, and I know you lost one of your friends. But, I mean, that was, I would think, a basketball. Clearly you were successful, but built a foundation of how enjoyable, and again, you were a basketball family with your dad being a coach. But that must have been really special and something that you really treasure.
My South Jersey heritage is, you know, my father, you know, Dr. John Giannini, who many people, like, I didn't work for him at LaSalle, but I played under him at Rowan University. At Glassboro State is when I started. He was a huge influence. I learned a lot about the mental part of the game from him. But my grade school days back to St. Rose, which not many people could even mention, Tom, but you're on it, under a guy by the name of Timmy Lenahan. And of all the names that I just mentioned to you, from Hall of Famer and Herb McGee to NBA head coach and a successful head coach and Brett Brown, to Jay Wright, he's got 2 national championships. You know, Timmy Lenahan, who was my grade school coach, is on par with them in terms of the influence that he had on me, particularly from a player development standpoint and an inspirational standpoint. I learned so much, you know, and as an influential person when you're in grades 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then I carried that relationship on to my 20s. He was one of the first calls that came in when I got the Naval Academy job. Wow, so blessed. And the South Jersey part of me will never leave. It's who I am. But not only am I from there, the significance of those mentors that I had, those opportunities I had playing for those coaches were a huge part in my ascension as a head coach.
And then the professional team, obviously the Sixers. I know how long you've been married, only based on you took your wife on a date to the 2001 NBA Finals. So you've been a lifelong Sixers fan. And then 6 years ago, I suppose, 7 years ago, you get a job to coach pro basketball players and bring your development skills to professional players. What was that experience like?
Oh, man. I mean, Tom, I will say this. I could have stayed with the 76ers for the rest of my life. I loved being a part of that organization, and I loved being in the NBA. I could have stayed in the NBA for the rest of my life. It's just truly an opportunity that I had to be at a place that I hold in high regard. Was the only reason that I was pulled from there. This just was epic for me. For me, being at St. Joe's is a dream. The opportunity I had to be with the 76ers was a dream too. And in many ways, it was perfect for the type of person that I am. I actually enjoyed the process part of it. You know, it was painful to win 10 games, particularly when you're playing 82 of them. But the enjoyment of watching guys like Robert Covington and Jeremy Grant, and then drawing and learning from guys like Brett and Lloyd Pierce and Mike D'Antoni, Chad Iskey, these were memories, true memories. And to think, I'm like looking at that logo over your shoulder right now, and to think that I actually had an opportunity to coach this team when I stood in line to get a poster signed by Dr. J after they won the 83 championship, to just be some small part of the history of the Philadelphia 76ers is a blessing.
So you mentioned the 82 game schedule, and being a basketball guy like yourself, to be part of that grind in terms of just how the games keep coming, the preparation. And you have, as a head college coach, you have a myriad. You have 10 or 12 things you have to really be good at. And a lot of them are off the basketball court. But to have all basketball, to manage the relationships and work with guys and work with the coaches, develop game plans, everything that goes into it, as Coach Brown says, it's like drip, drip, drip. It doesn't stop. In a way, as you guys say, in a perverse way, you probably like that.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I'm very regimented to begin with and very disciplined. I love routine. So it is nonstop. People think you get a lot of downtime, but you don't. Like you're on it. There's a game that's just right behind you right after you close the other one out. And you learn how to not waste time and to cut to what's most important, as we learned under Coach Brown, and to try to help your guys the best way you can. I love that. Now, where it's helped me actually in college, more so than when I was in college before, is the discipline of like getting things done in a efficient manner and cutting fat out helps me in all those other myriads of ways that you have already mentioned, whether it's recruiting or fundraising or staff development, understanding how to build a schedule for the day. The NBA has helped me tremendously. The discipline and diligence it takes to sustain a level of energy throughout a season has paid huge dividends for me as I entered back into the college space.
And we'll enter back into your personal life, as you mentioned, with your boys. Certainly now, I know we're social distancing, but I imagine there's some backyard and there's some basketball going on.
Yeah.
As a father, and each one of your boys probably has a different personality.
Yeah.
What's it like helping to guide them and not being overly pushy? Like, what's it like, that balance? And also, getting in the gym and watching your kids play must be, I know it's a great dream.
Yeah. I mean, you and I had so many conversations about our children and watching them grow and develop, and sports just offers so much for their overall holistic development, not just the basketball. I mean, in this time of the pandemic, when we're all socially distanced and squeezed in on our quarantines, I can't imagine what it would have been like 10, 12 years ago. At least now they've got technology to go distract them for a little bit. But what I've enjoyed with this, my kids have grown up with incredible resources when it comes to basketball, whether it's being able to get in a cool gym or have an NBA player development coach show them something, or guys at Villanova or guys at St. Joe's. But what they miss out on is something you alluded to earlier, is just like getting to the playground at St. Rose and playing. So a few of my favorite memories have been our wicked Uno games at the kitchen table after dinner. A lot of cheating going on there. Some just organic conversations that happen, being able to see the way they exist, watching my wife and just growing like an incredible affection for what she has to do on a day-to-day basis when I'm out and about doing what I've got to do. But what I've really enjoyed is like going to my window and watching my boys set up chairs on the driveway and pouring their own passion into their own, pouring their own work into their own passion is what I should say. Whereas a lot of things for kids these days are organized, but now they're being forced to figure out how much do they really love something because it's been taken away. And that's been pretty neat to see because it's really not like that much right now for American youth in sports. Everything is pretty structured and organized. So to see them go and creating their own structure has been pretty neat.
Well, Coach, I totally enjoy catching up with you. We wish you the best to you and your family and your program. We'll talk to you down the road. Thanks so much, Coach.
Tom, I miss you. I miss our conversation. So thank you for having me. I look forward to the NBA getting back and the Sixers making a great run in the playoffs.
All right. Thank you, Billy.